From smash rackets to heated debates, Indian Wells gets the competitive side out of the players and the fans. And here are the angriest moments as we gear up for the 2023 tournament in early March, starting with the Phantom Hawkeye. Now, before I begin the story, it's important for casual fans to know that Roger Federer and Juan Martín del Potro had some very hard-fought battles. Del Potro's forehand caused problems for most players on the tour, and it would normally be a menace for Federer's backhand too. And it would usually make matters worse, especially if the two were going at it under the sun. Indian Wells brings the heat, and that's why this duo features twice. The first one, let's start with the Phantom Hawkeye, as I mentioned before. First service game for Federer of the quarterfinal in Indian Wells back in 2012. And after a hard-fought game, it's deuce. Federer launches one wide, and it's a close call on the ace. The linesman calls it in, surprisingly, and Federer, almost foreshadowing a potential review from Del Potro, gets a position to serve again. But before he can do that, Del Potro signals for the challenge, and the umpire tells him that the Hawkeye isn't operational. Enter chaos! Del Potro can't believe the luck and ends up telling the umpire to at least replay the point because the ball was definitely out. He doesn't agree and sticks with the original call of in, while Del Potro gets furious. On replay, the audience sees the ball was actually out, but Federer gets away with one as the crowd surprisingly boos him for a second there too. You don't see that very often, just like you don't see Simona Halep smashing her racket to smithereens. This is a much more recent example. Halep last year was caught in the midst of the Iga Swiatek storm, and up until that point, she was leading their head-to-head 2-1. The tide since their first meeting had turned, and Swiatek, despite losing in the fourth round of the Australian Open 2021 to Halep, was looking for revenge. The two stars met in the semi-final of the Indian Wells as Halep would end up playing a really poor tiebreaker and losing the first set on her own serve. Swiatek smashed her serve right back at her and won the point, only for the Romanian to completely lose it. Former Wimbledon champion proceeded to smash her racket in disgust and would eventually go on to lose the game as well. But not every player completely loses their concentration after a setback, like the time Casper Ruud dealt with a rude fan. By now, you'll know that Indian Wells can be a hard place to keep your cool. I mean, you're in the desert, practically, and the sun's shining down on you. It's only understandable. But even then, someone like Ruud offers an exemplary way of dealing with the situation. Playing against Harris in round 3 of the 2021 edition, Ruud double faulted to start Game 9. Anyone who's been in the tennis game knows that whatever you do, you certainly don't clap at a double fault. It's rude, it's unnecessary, and it's just wrong. But a fan sitting courtside didn't get the memo and clapped a little too enthusiastically, only for Casper to get upset. I can't say he lost it, and I feel low-key wrong about adding it in the angriest moment. But to be fair, this is the closest Ruud will get to losing it. He asked the fan if he was here to provoke or what, and then also told him kindly that you're not supposed to clap on a double fault. The fan, at this point, wasn't even making eye contact, and he was eventually asked to leave. Well done, Casper. But not every conversation on the tennis court goes that way, as Fabio Fognini got angry with the umpire for a poor decision. Round 1 of the 2014 Indian Wells edition had Fognini making up for lost ground after losing the first set. In the second, he tried to put pressure on Harrison's service game and managed to outbox his lob, and the passing shot was enough to graze the line and get him the point. But as soon as Harrison failed to get the ball back, the linesman yelled, "Out!" Fognini challenged and won the challenge with the ball hitting the one completely. However, Fabio wasn't given the point. He believed that the call hadn't affected Harrison's shot, and if I'm being honest, it certainly didn't. Harrison was never reaching it, and while he did make contact with the ball, it fell meekly in front of him. The umpire tried explaining that the call was made at the same time, but Fabio wasn't having any of it, and he went on to tell the umpire that he made a similarly disastrous decision in Istomin's game a day before, while also asking for the supervisor appetizer. After a lot of expletives, which involved telling the umpire that he doesn't effing care, the decision went Harrison's way. But it woke the Italian beast up as he cruised to a win from that point on, only dropping one game in that set, which was almost exactly what spurred on both Del Potro and Federer in the Indian Wells 2018 final. Now again, this isn't the angriest moment per se, but it was a heated game. You could cut the tension with a knife. Honestly, I've seen Federer all my life, and ever since he became tennis royalty, it happens very rarely that he plays a match with such passion and emotion. Maybe it had something to do with his twins in attendance, but Del Potro had a lot on his mind too. He wanted to take revenge a few years back, as the two exchanged blow after blow. Having lost the first set, Federer was pumped up and celebrated some sensational points to get back to level terms. But the Argentine hammer was out just at the right time, with Federer serving for the tournament with 2 match points. Del Potro fought back to force a tiebreaker in the third, which he won comfortably, celebrating with a lot of passion. Easily one of the greatest finals of all time. Talking about anger, how about Daniil Medvedev reaction to a surprise loss at the Indian Wells? This is up there as the most justified angry reaction of all time. I mean, I can at least understand this one. Last year, Medvedev had become ATP's #1 and 2 weeks into his reign as the best player in the world. Medvedev faced Gael Monfils, needing at least the quarters to hold on to his ranking. But after losing the second set and his serve in the third, the Russian had enough. He just couldn't hit a single shot that day, and Monfils took advantage with the lead. That led to Medvedev's insane reaction and absolutely smashed his racket in frustration. It was so bad that Monfils had to remove the debris with a towel, but it still comes in at second place. Sorry, Daniil, because once again, Nick Kyrgios takes the cake. There was something about last year's edition. So many people lost their cool. Kyrgios lost to Rafael Nadal in the quarterfinals after a really good showing in the second half. But the match ended with many obscenities, thanks to Kyrgios, obviously, a point penalty and a couple of smashed rackets, one of which could have ended in a disaster as Nick's racket took a bounce and nearly struck a ball kid. He was so angry that he even asked a spectator sitting next to Ben Stiller, the actor, yes, if he tells him how to act, demanding respect from the spectator. Well, with Nick, you're bound to get your money's worth. That's all I had for you in the angriest moments at Indian Wells, and I can't wait to see more of them when it begins early next month.